Number 3. Genesis 1:28. As noted before, Young Earth believers say before the fall, the earth was blissful and perfect, with no death or suffering. But Genesis 1:28 suggests the opposite was true. Humanity is told to subdue the earth and have dominion over all animals. In Hebrew, these words are extremely harsh. The first word is used of war conquest and enslavement. The second word refers to ruling harshly over someone, or oppression. So God is telling humans to make a warlike conquest on the earth because it needs subdued, implying the earth wasn't perfect and humanity was elected to transform the earth into a better place. But to do that meant tackling the harsh environments forcefully. The scholar Joshua John Van E notes the use of the second word for ruling over the animals seems to suggest humans had the right to use animals for any purpose, like food and clothing, implying they already had the right to kill and eat animals. But this means the command from God implies the earth was not a perfect, blissful creation. Instead, this verse implies the earth was chaotic and needed order brought to it. Also, humans seem to be given the right to kill animals, implying death was already in existence.
I'd like to follow up with this because I've seen this follow-up argument now used in response to what we say on a very good creation and no death before the fall. Firstly, what came to mind in your answer was when we take the Bible in its entirety, then we have to conclude that it's not just death for man, but death for all of the biological world and degeneration in the universe in general. But I've heard, again, many theistic evolutionists say that there was death before the fall. And one of their arguments or points pertains to Genesis 1:28, where God says to subdue the earth and to also have dominion over all animals. And they'll say that in Hebrew, these words are extremely harsh and are used to indicate war, conquest, and enslavement. And so the claim basically, Dr. Lisle, is that God is telling humans to make a warlike conquest on the earth, to subdue it, and thus contradicting a perfect creation with no sin and no death. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this argument.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It's not true. The Hebrew words for subdue and rule really mean subdue and rule. The Bible really has been pretty well translated. The Hebrew word for subdue, I believe it's kavash, and it really means just to bring into order. It can be used of slaves, but I think that contradicts the old earth argument, doesn't it? Because Hebrew slaves were not allowed to be mistreated under biblical law. If you hurt your slave, he was immediately, you bust a tooth or something, you hit him so he knocks out a tooth, he's immediately freed and he doesn't have to pay back the rest of his debt. That's the way you would become a slave, or one way is you rack up enough debt you can't possibly pay it back. You ask a rich person to pay off your debt, and then you work for him for a number of years. But if you're mistreated, if you're treated harshly, you're immediately released. They weren't allowed to do that. But they were under the control of their master. And so that's the way that word was used. It's also used of land after it's been, you can conquer a land, but then after it's been subdued. God uses that same word of the peaceful conditions that exist long after the war is over. Hey, the land's subdued, you're all good there. And likewise, the word for rule or have dominion, I believe that's radah in Hebrew. And it's used in many other places. It's used in Psalm 72, verse 8 of the Messiah's rule. Does Jesus rule harshly? Well, if you're his enemy, he'll destroy you. Right. But does he rule over me harshly? Not at all. I'm very grateful that Christ rules over my life, and it uses the same Hebrew word, radah, maybe in a different inflection, but it's the same word. So no, those words don't have anything to do with harsh conditions or anything like that. They just mean to take control, to subdue, and to rule the same way that a king would rule over his kingdom. And a good king rules over his kingdom with grace and mercy, not with severity or harsh actions.
It's interesting you said that, because just today I'm listening to an audiobook by Paul Copan, Is God a Vindictive Bully? And I'm at the part in the book where he's going through everything that you've just stated there from a well-researched perspective. So yeah, that's great.
Good to hear.
So Well, firstly, it's a fantastic answer, and I'm just flabbergasted that that argument is still repeated even today.